You are tuned into the Green Hornet Case Files, a beacon of truth in a world shrouded in mystery. Unveiling the legacy and cultural significance of one of the greatest crime fighters of all time. Now, let the adventure begin. Here are your hosts, Kory and Greg.
For those of you that are counting, I'm Greg.
And I'm Kory.
And he's Kory.
No matter what my claims are.
You've tried a few times to confuse me, which is not a hard thing to do. It's easy to confuse me. Yes. Hey, welcome to episode, I believe this is episode 11 of the Green Hornet Case Files.
Season 2.
Season 2. And that means we're just about halfway through season 2.
Yep. Doing good.
I'm excited. I'm excited about that. Hey, we have some fun for you this time around. We're going to introduce our guest here in just a little bit, but I'm really excited about having her on board. We'll get into that here just momentarily. I had some nice comments this last week. I don't have them written down here, but again, thanks to everybody who's been reaching out. We've seen the numbers on the radio program going up, and I like seeing, that. As opposed to...
That's a bold statement.
Going down.
They can't go down. It's not Ferris Bueller where you're taking the miles off by putting the car in reverse, man.
Well, whatever kind of works. It has been a labor of love. Not an awful lot in the way of Green Hornet news either.
No, but we did get a couple of emails with people throwing their suggestions for crossovers in the ring.
Yes,
and,
we did.
I want to revisit that at a later date.
Okay, go back to the pulp thing.
Yeah. Back on the last episode, I had asked a question about if you could see the Hornet crossover with any other character, what would it be? Yeah, and we've gotten a few responses. I kind of want to see if there's a few more out there, and we'll kind of tackle that topic again.
We talked about the Scooby-Doo thing, right? That there was and I can't find it. I have, so if you know of where I can locate, Scooby-Doo, because Scoobs is one of my all-time fave characters.
Little behind the scenes thing. When Greg and I were first talking about jumping back into the podcast ring, Scooby-Doo was the first one we thought of.
We did.
We had talked about doing a Scooby-Doo podcast. And I still think it's probably in the ether somewhere. It may happen.
It could very well. I was at one of the last cons that I was at, and I was standing there having a conversation with Tom, and I'm going to get his last name wrong. But Tom is actually one of the artists that did work with Hanna-Barbera on Scoobs.
Oh, so, awesome.
Yeah. And cool. Even though I can't think of his name and he can't remember mine, we're going to connect.
Thick as thieves right there.
Yeah, we are. It's just, yeah, that's not going to happen. One of the things that is keeping the Hornet alive, and Kory and I just had what I think is a great idea. Kory said he had the idea before I did, and maybe he did. But...
Well, no, I had been kicking around ideas. Well, we think of things tangentially, and they're often very, very in line with each other.
Yeah, definitely. We're looking at the idea of maybe doing a roundtable to find out, what some of the guests we've had on the show. And in fact, we can ask our guest this time around and get her thoughts on this, but maybe do a roundtable with some of the past guests that we've had. Martin Grams, Ron Fortier. I just spoke with Jeff Butler this morning, the artist that did the Now stuff, and Jeff wants to come on the show. So maybe we do a roundtable with some of these folks to talk about what they feel is necessary to get the Hornet back on top. I like the idea.
It's going to be a good episode when we get there.
Yeah, and it will be forthcoming. Speaking of, I have this was a Christmas gift from my best half, my only half. It's not like I have multiple, halves. Multiple personalities, maybe. That's a whole other thing. She gave me a wonderful gift for Christmas. It is Let's Roll, Cato, a guide to TV's The Green Hornet, Book 6 in the BRB TV Fact Book series by our guest this time around, Billie Rae Bates. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much, Greg. I appreciate the opportunity to come on. And I also love Scooby-Doo.
Now we got to go with it. There's the next book right there.
She's done one already. She's done one.
Yeah,
you did
I've done a
Scooby
report
one already?
on Scooby-Doo. Yeah, the original Scooby-Doo series, the original 1969 cartoon that I grew up with. I did an ebook, which I call a BRB TV report, and as part of a series. Yeah.
So Billie Rae has now. Do you go by Billie Rae, or just
either
don't
one
call me
is
late for dinner?
Fine. I tend to go by Billie when I'm first introducing myself because, believe it or not, I hear a lot of Billie Ray Cyrus jokes still, even though he hasn't really been in the public eye in recent years. But since the 1990s. Every time I introduce myself, if I'm not in the South, I did live in the South for a while in Georgia, and I would say Billie Rae, and they wouldn't blink at that because everybody's a Bobby Joe or a Billy Sue or something down
That's
there.
Right.
But in the North, where I'm from, I had to start introducing myself as just Billie because I kept hearing Billie Rae Cyrus jokes. So yeah, either way really is fine.
All right. Well, Billie is she's an author. She's a journalist. If you want to check out a website, it's Billie Rae, BILLIERAE.com. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. Dynasty, Dallas, Dukes of Hazzard, Super Chicks, Super Friends, Batman books, a number of Batman books, Scooby-Doo, ISIS, Wonder Woman, Superman, Green Hornet, all of the different. Is this your childhood again?
Yes, this is a lot of my childhood TV viewing, although the Green Hornet did predate me. But most of the stuff I've written about, just TV shows I loved when I was growing up. Yeah, totally.
I love the fact that you've jumped into these, and we were just chatting just briefly before we started the show that the thing that I love so much about Let's Roll, Cato, a guide to TV's Green Hornet, is the fact that you actually did your journalistic due, and that was to dig into the archives. And there's letters here from George Trendle to William Dozier about the creation of the TV show. There's letters in here from the producers, other producers, behind the scenes people, the bookkeepers trying to figure out why the show is not making money, from some guy named Van Williams. I don't know why you keep bringing this guy's name up here.
Right.
Yeah, but letters from these people. It's the behind the scenes of the Green Hornet book. If the Green Hornet wasn't one of your growing up, why bring a book like this, a wonderful tome, to the public?
Well, that was my question, actually. How we get here.
Yeah. It totally was not anything that I watched growing up, but it did start with an interview. I had a friend who knew Van Williams and said, "Hey, would you be interested in talking to Van Williams?" And I'm like, "Oh, okay." So he set me up with an interview, and it was such a wonderful interview. We talked for like an hour and a half, 2 hours about all different kinds of stuff. And I thought, I'd like to do something more with this. And so I started looking into the TV show, and that's really how this project was born for me. Is I realized I had access. Oh my gosh, it's the only project I've ever worked on, the only book in the series that I've ever worked on where I had the benefit of a creator's whole office files, all of their files at the Detroit Public Library nearby, because I'm in Metro Detroit in Michigan. And I just could not believe. So that's how I spent my Saturdays for quite a few months, sitting down, taking pictures of all of these different office files, of George Trendle's here in Detroit that pertain to the making of the TV show. And I knew that I wanted to zero in on the TV show because I was well aware of Martin and Terry's wonderful book, very, very thick book covering the character itself. And I didn't want to run over the same ground. I met Martin at an event in DC because we both go to Comic-Con. So I think it was either Awesome Con in DC or maybe it was the Baltimore Comic-Con. I don't know. I met him at one of those events and talked to him quite a while. And wonderful guy. And so I didn't want to repeat their work. And I'm a TV nut. I write about TV. That's what I do. That's my area that I write about. So I thought, I'm going to dive right into the TV show. And so that's really how it all started. And it's been a labor of love. I really enjoyed it. And it is a great TV show, even though it only lasted one season.
I'm fascinated by the behind the scenes, as I said. And if you start digging into the behind the scenes of the TV show, of why it didn't last more than one season, it gets very convoluted. There are a lot of stories and a lot of, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, Billie, that there's a lot of finger pointing that has gone on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so. I mean, Van Williams himself was a little bit critical of the TV show or certain aspects of the TV show, like the fact that it was only a half hour, not enough time to really develop a good storyline, and the fact that it was a sister show to the very campy Batman, but was a totally different tone and feel to it, which kind of didn't work for some people. I think it was a little bit confusing at the time, it sounds like. But yeah, there's been some criticism, but I think there are just so many things about the show that did work. I really am sad that they did not give it another season at least.
Let it try and find its feet a little bit.
Well, yeah, I think after, what they did, again, Van was always very vocal about the show, and the interview that I replayed with Van that I did quite a number of years back. That was one of the first, one of the things that he mentioned was the fact that, how do you squeeze all this great, wonderful stuff into, 30 minutes? It just never seemed to work.
So, Billie Rae, as you said, you're from Detroit,
mm-hmm.
or you're in Detroit. First off, go Wings, and second off,
thank you.
And second off, do you see the Hornet as set in Detroit?
Oh my gosh. I think that's what I liked a lot about the Moonstone books is several of those writers did take that approach. I love Detroit. I will always love Detroit. My heart is in Detroit no matter where else I've lived. I lived in Georgia for a while. I lived on the East Coast in DC for a while. But Detroit is my home. And so I loved that aspect of the writers who contributed to the Moonstone books. I mean, I would love to think so, but I know that the substantiation for that is not there in the TV show or the radio series or the movie serials. But I would like to think it. We'll just put it that way.
That's always been one of the big questions. In fact, I was just reading on a forum the other day, somebody said that they just made the brash statement that the show was set in New York. And I'm like, no, it wasn't.
Never once said that.
Nope.
Not at all. In fact, you dive into that. You talk about that in one of the sections in the book about it was Central City or Metropolis or a Metropolis kind of a feel to it.
Yeah. And, it really was not named, but I know, like, for instance, on the radio series, there were other nearby cities that were named a lot, even including, I always have to laugh. They mentioned River Heights, and I can't think of River Heights without thinking of Nancy Drew, which I love. Nancy Drew, I grew up on those books. But I guess maybe the intent was it could be anywhere. The Green Hornet could be anywhere. It could be any city near you, that sort of thing.
Well, it always cracked me up that the very first episode, it opens with the shot of the Griffith Observatory. I'm like, well, that's L.A., okay.
Yeah, that's not the right place.
Yep.
We mentioned right up front that we're talking about doing a roundtable to one of the things that I've tried to have a conversation with the granddaughter of George Trendle, Mary Kay, is what's it going to take? What's it going to take to get the Hornet, back out into, public view so that I don't wind up going to a con like very often I do and get called, the Riddler or the Joker because they don't recognize, don't recognize the costume. What do you think it would take to get this back on TV or in a movie or just in the zeitgeist of the public?
Yeah. Well, not the movie version that they did most recently, because I think that the tone of Green Hornet always needs to be pretty serious, a little dark, very edgy. And he needs to be in a city talking about the city that's pretty edgy too. And that's another reason that, hey, Detroit works. Detroit's very edgy and Detroit's very real. I'll tell you that. But I think that the approach needs to be, for one thing I was bummed about the TV series is I'm a fan of origin stories. And there was no origin story. You had the picture of Britt's dad hanging on the wall in his office at the Sentinel. You had a mention of his dad in The Frog is a Deadly Weapon. But it's like, okay, tell us more about your dad. What was his deal? When did you take over the newspaper for him? When did you become the Green Hornet? When did you meet Cato? How did all of that happen? I wanted to know all of that. And I was so bummed that we start in progress, just like they did with the radio series. I know they did the same thing, is that basically Britt Reed had been the Hornet and he had been out there for a while and we join him in progress. But some episode, it doesn't have to be the first episode, but some episode that dives below the surface and takes on some of his origin. And then also, I think, and I think it's been mentioned before on your prior episodes of the podcast, that it would have been nice to have a set of villains, so to speak. I know this is not a superhero. We don't have superpowers here, but maybe a recurring problem, a recurring thorn in his side that is a single person that keeps rearing his head, like a master criminal or something that you get to develop the character for a little bit. I mean, think about Batman, not to really make that comparison with Batman because he's a totally different hero, but he has this rogues gallery, which we all know so well, and not the least bit obscure. We know all of those villains, but each one has a developed character. And so if they were to take that approach with a Green Hornet TV show or movie or something like that, but I mean, not so much a movie, but if you're talking the episodes of a TV show, to have a recurring character who's at odds with the Hornet, or even like a gang in town, or a mafia or organized crime, or something that keeps popping up that we see some development with as the series progresses. But yeah, I always wanted an origin story. That's the biggest thing for me is, and that's the reason I love the Now comics. I know you had Ron in a previous episode, and I love Ron, and I loved his research and his attention to detail. See, I am a fan of continuity. And so Ron was continuity to the 10th degree. He actually linked these different Hornets together through time. He made it all work with the dads and sons and grandsons and all of that. He made it all work, and I absolutely loved it. So you know what? Now that I mention it, I'll just put that out there. Take the Now comics and make that a TV show.
You nailed it. 100%.
I'm sure Ron would not have any aversion to that.
Yep.
Whatsoever. It's really interesting thoughts that you've said that, because, we've had people before that have gone, well, there was Oliver Perry. Well, there was Oliver Perry, but Oliver Perry didn't come along until the end of the radio show, endish of the radio show, and was only in 5 episodes, I believe, of the Hornet, which obviously is more than any other, evil person, the bad guy, but never really saw it as, it's not this over the top. It's not the Joker. It's not the Riddler. It's not, Catwoman and that kind of thing. Whereas Joe's Moonstone books have done a little better job. Some of the writers have come up with actual, villains that have filled those pages that have had recurring parts to play. And I tend to think that you maybe are right on that.
Yeah, I would love to see that. I think that would be a wise choice.
The interesting part that also plays into this is the shift in, going back to Batman specifically, the shift in how they handle the content right now, with the Matt Reeves movie and Penguin TV series, is the over the top villain is taking a back seat to, like, the umbrella over all of it is Carmine Falcone. Mm-hmm. Which just leans that, that criminal underworld is rife with the taking. You don't need the bombastic, over the top villain. You just need a constant foil, your Moriarty, if you will.
Yeah,
and I think that's what the Hornet needs right now.
Yeah. And I think, I haven't seen that Penguin series you're talking about, but it reminds me what you're saying of the Gotham TV series that I think was on the CW.
Yeah.
Yes.
Where you did see those kind of mafia type characters, and there was a continuing threat of that through the series. Like there was always some storyline involving them. So, yeah.
Looking at your book, in fact, I was just reading this section last night as George Trendle was trying so very hard to keep the TV series alive, even, several years after the show had been canceled, and trying to get a new series going, and basically pointing his finger at the production company and saying that, if you had done what I asked you to do in the first place, it would have been a hit. My brain starts to say maybe George was right. Had he have had his way, would it have been a better show?
Yeah, that is interesting. He fought so hard for so many elements of that TV show. And I definitely had to admire him going through all of his files and all of that correspondence that you mentioned, especially between him and William Dozier. That was a really robust working relationship for a while, until at one point, I think Dozier just kind of passed him off to, was it Richard Blue? Someone else on his staff. I think he probably had enough at that point. Is like, okay, can you correspond with Mr. Trendle? But for a while there, Trendle just fought so hard for all the different elements. He really envisioned the TV show to be his radio series come to life. And he had that in large part with the movie serials. The movie serials were very faithful to the radio series. And of course, they were on at the same time as the radio series. But the TV series, he really just wanted all of the elements of the radio series. And he was a stickler for that. And he didn't want that dumb fireplace entrance as he saw at the secret entrance for Scanlan to come and see the Hornet. He didn't want Scanlan to be summoned like that. He thought Scanlan was a professional, and he did not need to be summoned like some little assistant to the Hornet. He took exception with that too. And I admire Mr. Trendle, because here he is in his 80s. He's like in his, I think, early 80s, and he is sharp as his tack, and he is so actively involved and wanting to be even more involved than he is in the TV show, and just immersed in it. And you can't get anything by this guy. He is just on it every moment of every day when he's looking at the plans and the scripts, reviewing the scripts. And so I really have to admire that. I hope that I'm that sharp in my 80s as well. But yeah, I think that he really envisioned it to be his radio series come to life. Now, would it have been successful? Would it have gone longer than one season if that were the case? I don't know. I enjoyed the radio series. I thought it was great. Maybe if they would have done an origin episode and then made it more like the radio series. I don't know. See, I'm still on that continuity thing and that origin episode thing. But yeah, you could say, you have to wonder, make it an hour long and make it more like the radio series. Maybe it would have been a success. Who knows?
At 87, George Trendle was still writing letters to try and get his baby, his second child, third child, I guess, depending on how you look at, all the different shows that were created over the years, you got to look at it and go, he's 87 years old and he is still fighting very hard, to have this creation of his. And there's this sad part in me that says, oh my, he was right up to the very end. This man believed so passionately about his creation that, one of the last things that he ever did was to, write a letter to the producers and say, we need to have this show created someplace else.
Yeah, he did push for that. And it's sad. After the TV show got canceled, there was still some business to take care of. There were still some outstanding items to wrap up. The show was going to go into syndication. They were still dealing with some merchandise aspects. And so in those ensuing months after, everybody knew the show was done, but yet there's these straggler things going on for a year or two. It's sad. It's really sad. I mean, I can imagine how terrible that was for him to deal with.
Have you had a chance to look at the Kevin Smith? Have you read through the Kevin Smith comics?
I have a lot of them. Yeah, not all of them, but I bought as many as I could at the time when I was doing the research for the book. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I feel like Kevin had a good finger, both Ron and Kevin in a different way. Both of them had a really good feeling, a really good feel for where the Hornet came from and where it was going. And I always kind of felt sad that, Kevin's vision wound up getting relegated to a comic book, although I love the comic books. And when I look at the movie, the it shall not be named movie, I see a lot of elements that Seth put in the film that were Kevin elements. And I've often wondered about that whole thing. Do you feel like that was a just way of doing it? Because you're talking about origin stories. Mm-hmm. Was he right or wrong, or how do you feel about that?
I think there's just way too much about the movie that was just wrong. I mean, the overall tone. Any of us classic TV show fans who have seen movie adaptations of our beloved show in more recent years, The Dukes of Hazzard, A-Team, Starsky and Hutch, there's just almost too many to name. We just shake our heads and it's like, oh my gosh, what are they thinking? These movie adaptations are just so dumb because they all took a comedic approach when the original subject matter, it was like they betrayed the original subject matter. The original subject matter did not have that tone. And it's definitely the case with the Green Hornet in that, oh my gosh, what on earth were you thinking? It just didn't work. And so it is really a shame, though, as far as Kevin Smith, because Kevin Smith has done so many movies. He's so much a part of movie culture and a movie producer and so much into movies that I really can't even believe that it didn't happen, his vision. So yeah, it is a shame that it was relegated to comic books, but hopefully they've been popular. Hopefully it at least has gotten him some acclaim for his view of the Green Hornet.
As I'm going through the book, in fact, I just thumbed through a couple of pages here. One of the things I enjoy so much about the book is you've pulled in so many different people, and the one that just surprised the heck out of me. And Kory, you don't know this at this point. Are you familiar with who Wally Wingert is?
No.
And Wally, probably best known as the announcer on Jay Leno's Tonight Show, where he kind of got going, and he's a voiceover artist and so forth, and a collector. I did not know Wally was a Hornet fan. How did you, Billy? How did you find Wally? Billy, how did you find Wally?
Yeah, Wally is great. I love Wally. I'm actually talking to Wally about another property, another TV show that shall remain unnamed that I've been slowly working on a book about, because Wally's a fan of that too. Wally's great. And just an amazing collector. Oh my gosh, if you've ever seen a YouTube video of his collection, he's got a little bit on YouTube about his collection. that is just eye-popping. I mean, it's almost impossible how much he owns. But it was my mutual friend. My friend, again, Greg is his name, who introduced me to Van Williams several years ago, also introduced me to Wally, said, hey, you got to talk to my friend Wally. Wally's got this and Wally's got that, and Wally likes the Green Hornet. So yeah, that's how that all came about.
We need to get to know Greg. Obviously, Greg has connections.
Yep, he does. He loves going to the left coast, the LA area, and he loves visiting the film sites of these TV shows. He loves classic TV shows like I do.
The book is called Let's Roll, Cato, a guide to TV's The Green Hornet. Billie Rae Bates is the author, the writer. And she's our guest here on the Green Hornet Case Files today. I urge everybody to go grab a copy of the book. Again, the behind the scenes stuff is what makes the whole thing real, in seeing how Van would tell stories about the cast and crew, and Van was a great person on the set. He would tell stories against Bruce Lee about how sometimes this little guy would irritate him so much because he would get kicked in the ear all the time, and it was Bruce practicing. And I guess my heart breaks because the show didn't do what the show should have done. And you have a really great way of covering that here in the book. Was there anything in going through all of the Detroit Public Library files that maybe surprised you or caught your attention?
Not any one particular thing that I can remember. I'm just a real geeky girl, and so I will sit there and read through every word of this stuff, these letters that went back and forth, and these files, and the early plans for even a newspaper comic strip, for the Hornet, and seeing the proofs of that. It was all very, very fascinating to me. I'm fascinated by all of the different facts around it, and there actually was even too much to include in the book. I could have made the book probably a lot longer if I would have wanted to. All of that geeky stuff just fascinates me. So yeah, not any one thing in particular that I can remember. Just I guess maybe the patterns and the recurring theme of the frustration of George Trendle in certain aspects of the TV production. And you can also read in those letters the frustration of William Dozier too. It's like, hey, we're just trying to do a TV show here. So don't be quite so much up in my business, okay? like trying to keep them happy to a certain extent. But try to keep him in his place too. There's the struggle back and forth between the two men, and you can definitely see that. And they had a lot of respect for each other. They were very much on friendly terms. I don't think that George Trendle was on as friendly a term with the person that he corresponded with after William Dozier. I think with William Dozier, he just had a rapport, and so he could just spit it out. He was a very direct communicator, so he would just throw it out there. He wasn't worried about hurting feelings or anything because he wasn't trying to hurt feelings. He was just like, okay, I want it this way. And, it didn't always work, but the two men respected each other, and I was very struck by that aspect as well.
There is so much to read between the lines when you read through some of these things, as you said, between the two of them. And from being somebody, and I think Kory understands this as well, that if you're a writer and you've created something and you give rights to somebody else to do a property, you tend to lose some of yourself in their vision of what they want to do with it. Many times when somebody has written something and they wind up selling it to TV or movies or whatever, it gets lost. The original intent totally gets lost. And I think you mentioned that just, earlier, even when we're doing remakes of TV shows, it just totally gets lost. So I feel for both men from, seeing that viewpoint of this is my creation, and this is what I see that you should do with it. I don't want you to put this weird, staircase or, the fireplace thing in. I don't want you to do this. I think you should do this. And then the other person saying, yeah, but that worked for the 1930s and 40s. This is the 1960s.
Yeah. And for instance, the Sentinel has a TV station. So I think they made an effort to bring it up to date for the 1960s, like you're saying, and make it a little snazzier. You have the Hornet Sting that you didn't have before. And you got this Black Beauty that is just totally decked out, like all these great gadgets and stuff, those were all really good choices, I think, like with the Black Beauty, because people have admired that car so much over the years. And then, of course, you've got Cato, played by Bruce Lee, who was just a legend and just becoming a legend on that show. And so there are so many great things that modernize the Green Hornet for the TV show that did work. So yeah, I mean, I think maybe it's good in a way that George Trendle did not get his way on everything, because they did some of the more modernizing aspects of the TV show did lead to it being still remembered today. I mean, I do also wish it was remembered more. I wish that you were not called some other character when you cosplay, like who is that? Who is that guy in the long coat? But yeah, I mean, who knows? Hope springs eternal, and there may be a new incarnation that just blows it wide open and brings this character to the forefront. That's always possible.
So that being said, you said to yourself you're a TV fan. Would you prefer to see it come back in form of a television series or in a movie?
A TV series, definitely.
Well, you mentioned that you are in the process of doing more work, more books, more TV series. Anything you can tease us with at this point?
Well, I've been working on two more books in the BRB TV series. They're 1970s though, not 1960s, and they are one of them is a show I actually watched when I was a kid. The other one I watched later. And then I've always got in mind some of the shorter ebook reports that I'd like to do. We'll see how much time I have for that. I've had my head in true crime the past 7 or 8 years. I've put the BRB TV stuff.
Haven't we all?
Yeah. It's been definitely an up and coming genre the past 5 to 10 years or so. But I put the BRB TV projects on not quite the back burner, but maybe a side burner. I still do a YouTube series on collectibles, focusing on classic TV shows. And I've done a few episodes on Green Hornet merchandise as part of that. So I always continue to work on that. And I always pick away at the book projects, but I've been concentrating most of my time in recent years to some true crime book projects, which are now done. And so now I'm switching gears again and getting back to this other pop culture classic TV stuff and loving it all over again.
Can you talk about what the true crime ones are?
I've written about 2 different Detroit serial killers, convicted serial killers. One is named John Eric Armstrong, and the other one Benjamin Atkins. So I've done book projects on both of those. Again, researching fully here in Detroit, and really, really have enjoyed the true crime thing, because I am a fan of true crime, and I didn't even ever think I would write about it. And once I started researching these projects, which are so different from the classic TV show stuff, I immersed, but I am a journalist at heart. And so it really called me back to my time at daily newspapers myself, and my journalism degree and all that. It really got me back into that aspect of it. So I definitely enjoyed it and kind of wished I had done it sooner, but now I'm switching gears again. So, I mean, I love both worlds, but I guess, that's true crime. And now I'm back in the crazy stuff, the crazy pop culture stuff.
That's awesome. That's fantastic.
I think that's one of the things that I always enjoyed about the Hornet was it was true crime. And at its heart, it's just true crime.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he is a crime fighter in a way. I do call him a hero of sorts, but definitely not a superhero. Although to me, he was always lumped together. And I know that you guys, you both have address the issue of, or the question of, is he a pulp hero or is the Green Hornet pulp? I know that was a recent episode. And to me, being part of the comic book world, all of my adulthood, I've done a lot in the comic book area. I've done a lot of interviews and I've worked for TV shows that are comic book related. And so I've been immersed in that, and I've talked to a lot of guys that create these comics. And to me, Green Hornet was kind of lumped along with that. He, of course, did not start out as a comic book, but he did go into the comics later. And so that's how I always associated him, not as being from a radio series, which was his true roots. So it's interesting that I guess we all look at it from our own perspective, our own angle.
Oh, that's such an accurate way to come about it. Like, I mean, we've talked about our introductions to the character multiple times, but that's you find the incarnation that speaks to you, and that's typically the one you go back to over and over.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for Kory and I think Kory, you were more introduced to him through comics, weren't you?
Yeah, I watched the series. We talked about it a few times. Like it was rerun on FX back in the 90s, and I saw most of it then, but it wasn't really until I discovered the Matt Wagner Lone Ranger comic, and then that led me into Kevin Smith's Hornet run, and that's when I got bit, or stung, I should say.
Stung.
Yeah, definitely stung. And I was a child of the late 50s, early 60s, to the point where that was my introduction to the Hornet originally, was that, and then shortly thereafter, learning that it came from radio, which was a love of mine since, my early days of listening to my grandfather's transistor radio late at night, and listening to wonderful radio stations like WLS in Chicago, and KOMA in Oklahoma City, and KOA in Denver, and just my love of that medium over the years that has driven my love of the Green Hornet. So Billie Rae Bates has been our guest on the show. Her book is called Let's Roll, Cato, A Guide to TV's The Green Hornet. You can get your copy on Amazon, and I hope that you do pick up a copy of this, because it sits right beside Martin's book in my that thing that holds books. What's that called?
Shelf.
Shelf. Thank you. Don't call me the Riddler. I have no idea what the riddle of this, Batman. I have no idea what that thing is. It's a wonderful tome, and if you're looking for the behind the scenes, this is what you want to do. Is you want to pick up a copy of this book, and then go visit BillieRae.com, BillieRae.com, and check out all the other wonderful things that Billie has been working on, and has. I got to say thank you for keeping a lot of this stuff alive for us, Billie.
Yeah, well, thank you. I really appreciate it. I definitely appreciate every reader, and it was a joy to put it together. And even meeting Mary Kay myself, and and actually Linda too, and learning more about their family, and just learning where this character came from. And like I said, in no other project that I worked on did I actually have the benefit of all of these files. It was wonderful. I wish I could have that every time I embarked on a project like this. So it was very cool to do.
Well, thank you for taking a few minutes and sharing some of that love with us, and best of luck on all the other projects that you have going on.
Well, thank you so much. It was great to talk to you both.
Thoroughly enjoyed it. And actually, I just threw the Dukes of Hazzard book in my Amazon cart while we were recording.
That's awesome. Thank you.
So I'm going to read that one next.
That's great. Yeah, I was there for the very first episode of that show and loved that show through its entire run. And yeah, that's another whole different world that is wonderful to be part of.
Oh, we could have hours-long conversations about that for sure.
Oh, cool.
Just a part of our growing up.
Yep.
And That's the best part. That's the best part, is just going back and remembering and the feeling that we had as kids watching, all these great shows. So, Billie Rae Bates, thank you for spending some time with us here on the Green Hornet Case Files.
Well, thank you.
Absolute honor. Thank you so much.
Kory, I think with that, what we always say.
We say Ko-Fi.
That's right. ko-fi.com. If you liked what you heard, be sure and drop in there and, drop a few coins.
Any comments, any suggestions on the Crossover Conversation podcast at greenhornet66.com.
Yeah, I like it.
And then I think what you were looking for was a let's roll.
As the night envelops the city once more, our journey through the hidden alleys of history and valor comes to a close. You've been riding shotgun with the Green Hornet Case Files, where the echoes of the past meet the voices of the present. Tune in again for the next thrilling adventure, where shadows speak, secrets unfold, and the legacy of the Green Hornet continues to inspire. The Green Hornet Case Files is a Grail Productions podcast. The Green Hornet is owned exclusively by Green Hornet, Inc. Until next time, vigilant listeners, keep your wits sharp and your spirit unbreakable.